Better. I put my headphones in the phone.
Let's see. Yeah, that's better. All right, we are live. I think there's an echo on the X space now.
Well, I have the volume on my laptop shut down off of Restream, so that's on mute. So
Okay, I think maybe
only
we'll get
listening through X.
all right, well, if anyone in the audience hears an echo, just let us know. But I think we're good. Let me just get the Threadcast recorded. All right. Threadcast is being recorded. Looks like we're good. All right. Welcome, everybody. We are back with the AMA. No Cat today, so we've got a different Cat filling in. We've got Task here filling in for Mitch. How's it going, Task?
It's going well. Going well.
Nice.
Excited to learn more about Leo, as always.
There's been a lot going on. It's been a pretty hectic couple of weeks here. While we've really just been focused on LeoDex and getting the new V3 update ready to go live, which is honestly essentially like building a whole new app. But yeah, it's been like building a whole new app because we've not only are we we're adding the the other major cross-chain protocols like Thorchain, Chainflip, and Rango, in addition to what we already had with Maya. But in order to do that, we actually had to just essentially rewrite the whole way that swaps worked in general, so that now it can quote the swap across all 4 protocols simultaneously, and then the user chooses which protocol they want to swap through. And they may choose it based on best price, or how fast the swap will complete, or how or just buy the protocol, like if they prefer one protocol over another. So the new LeoDex V3 UI, when you quote your swap, it just lets you pick whichever options are available. And for some routes, some routes are available on some protocols, some routes aren't available on others. So this also adds a pretty significant number of assets to LeoDex for swapping that weren't available before. So it definitely opens us up in terms of other assets, like Solana's on there now. The whole base blockchain is on there, and a ton of other assets. So all those assets weren't available before because we only had whatever was on Maya. But now we have whatever's on Maya, Thorchain, Chainflip, and Rango. Rango has a lot because it's also an aggregator. So we have just a ton of new asset options with the LeoDex V3 update. And then obviously you also get a lot more efficient swaps, because now it's allowing you to choose from which protocol has the best quote at that time. So again, whether that's based on price or based on speed or a mixture of the two, you can choose. Ben Haas said, what is the total number of assets? Technically, we can do pretty much any asset because of Rango, but we've limited it. I think we're about at something around like 100 assets can be swapped on the new LeoDex V3. So it's about 100 assets. We've chosen, the major ones. And there's a reason why we're not doing like every single asset out there. But I think in the future, it might be possible. Like on Uniswap, for example, you're able to put in a token address, and then you can swap with even like the most fringe long tail assets. For now, we're just going to focus on these like top 100, and then we'll slowly add other ones in, possibly just added an option where you can choose whatever you want based on the contract address. And then you just kind of have to accept the disclaimers about, different assets and possible scam assets and whatnot if you're trading in the long tail of crypto, which I think pretty much everyone here knows. But when you look at like a LeoDex user, they may not know that or accept those risks.
So if I understand this correctly, the benefits, if to summarize, of what's taking place with LeoDex version 3 is number one, the ability to swap into a lot more assets than you could before. And number two is you have the ability to choose in many, if not most instances, some instances there may only be one pathway. You can choose your pathway based upon the metrics of either speed of transaction completion or cost or some variable thereof. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'll get the best way to look at it is you enter in your input and you enter in your output asset, like any other swap module, and then it will tell you it'll quote all the available routes, for those assets, and then you'll just get to choose from them. So I'll quote in a swap and then put the screenshot in the threadcast so you guys can see it. But let's see here. I'm putting that in the threadcast now. So you'll see in this screenshot I'm sharing, I put in 15 ETH in the input, and I put in Bitcoin in the output. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see routes, and that populates after you've put in the assets and the amount that you want to swap. And then it shows you Chainflip is currently the best price. Thorchain is the fastest. And then below that, it has Maya and Rango quoted as well, which are just kind of subpar in terms of the price and speed. So it actually recommends the best price swap. And then the second one will just be the fastest, like literally which one will complete the fastest. And then you can kind of decide, and it shows you also if you take a look at that route component. If you look at the bottom right of each quote, it actually shows you the amount of transaction fees and the time. So, for example, that Chainflip one is showing. Let's see here, $1.09 is the total fees on this swap, and 13 minutes is how long it'll take to complete. And then if you look at the Thorchain option, which says faster, it's going to be $43 in fees, and it's going to take 6 minutes. So you can choose, like if you need the swap to be done faster, you obviously will pay a little bit more in fees. And then Maya below that says $16, and it'll take an hour to complete the swap. So, and by the way, these routes are not static. So it's all happening in real time. It's pulling those quotes in real time directly from those protocols. And then if you sit on this page, actually every 30 seconds, the quote expires and it will auto renew the quote. So you'll actually see it load. So every 30 seconds, and there's a little countdown timer, every 30 seconds, you'll actually see the quote expire and then a new quote populates, because the prices are always changing. Like if someone else swaps on Thorchain, you guys know how liquidity pools work. The value of the swap may change. So wherever you're going to get the best price may actually change. And wherever the fastest swap is going to happen may also change, because there might be, like, for example, if a whale comes in right now and does a big streaming swap on Thorchain, it may actually take longer to do the Thorchain swap. So the quotes expiring every 30 seconds helps you get the most real-time accurate estimate for both the time it's going to take for the swap and the price of the swap.
So if I'm reading this correctly, that even through Thorchain, a $22,000 swap costs about $40, but if you go through Chainflip, it costs $1. I'm not familiar with Chainflip. Is there a lot of liquidity on there? Is Chainflip usually that much less expensive? What's the story there? Because I mean, $1 to swap $22,000 is nothing. Hell, $40 to swap $22,000 is nothing.
Yeah. So it's taking into account it's taking into account the affiliate fees, the price of the assets, any fees on the network itself, so Ethereum and the Bitcoin network, and then also any fees on the protocol layer. So when you kind of combine all those things, you can also get, if you guys are familiar with the aggregator at all, you can also get a little bit of arbitrage in terms of those assets. So like, for example, the price of pools, the price of a liquidity pool is not a static thing. It's always changing. So like if someone swaps, like if someone right before you swaps Bitcoin to Ethereum on Thorchain, that's going to actually change the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum on Thorchain, because it imbalances those pools. And then there's arbitrageurs who are always coming in and changing the balance back. So the price of Bitcoin, for example, on Thorchain right now might be, just to keep it simple, it might be $80,000. But the price for Bitcoin on ChainFlip might be $79,900. So that means that if you're swapping ETH to Bitcoin, it actually may be a lot more efficient to do it on ChainFlip in this particular moment, because Bitcoin's cheaper on ChainFlip. And that just happens. That's like a happenstance. Like it just, it's always changing, like I said. So the liquidity on ChainFlip is good, but they have less liquidity than Thorchain. But there is a difference in how ChainFlip actually works. So it without getting too technical, it opens a channel for your swap, and you're actually swapping with brokers on ChainFlip. It is still decentralized. It's a decentralized cross-chain swapping system, but it's built a lot differently than Thorchain and Maya. So you're swapping through this channel instead of the way that Maya and Thorchain work, where you're actually swapping through a vault. So like the Maya and Thorchain protocols have obviously a similar setup because Maya is a fork of Thorchain. ChainFlip is a whole different setup that actually their liquidity is actually hyper efficient. So like with less liquidity, the swaps can actually be cheaper on ChainFlip. So, and that's not for every route, but that's for some routes. I've noticed, especially like Bitcoin and Ethereum on ChainFlip is very cheap. So yeah, that can always change in real time. So like while it might be $1 now, it could be $50 on ChainFlip, if you requoted this swap, say 2 hours from now. Just looking through the threadcast now.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions. LeoDex asks, is there a functional difference if we click Hive as one of our networks from the LeoDex UI, or if we don't? I'm not sure if I quite follow that.
Yeah, so if you don't select Hive when you log into LeoDex, then it won't prompt you to log in with your keychain wallet, which means that you won't be able to do any Hive swaps. And if you try, you can actually try it. Try going to LeoDex and don't select Hive and log in with Keystore, for example, and then try to do a swap with Hive, like Hive to USDC or something. It will actually tell you to connect with Keychain since you're not connected. So selecting the network actually means that you're selecting it to log in.
Okay, I'm glad you understood that. LeoDex asked another one. Do you foresee these 4 DEX protocols being incentivized to, in quotes, compete more one with the others and try to catch up on speed or fees due to the real-time comparison that LeoDex provides the users with?
Let me see if I understand that better.
I think he's saying, if I'm understanding correctly, are these DEXs going to be incentivize LeoDex to try to incur more business from LeoDex with the speeds and fees of other chains there? Do you see them getting aggressive? Yeah. I don't think that's really the mechanism, but
yeah, I mean, I think that they're just all trying to be the best price and speed that they're capable of. I don't see them, and especially not because of LeoDex, but just in general, I don't see them like trying to necessarily compete with each other. They're more so, well, and if you really think about it, they're competing with centralized exchanges first and foremost, who still have 99% of all crypto volume is going through centralized exchanges. So what they're really competing with is the depth of liquidity and the efficiency of centralized exchanges. So, really, we've actually seen these DEX ecosystems, especially Thorchain and Chainflip and Maya, they've grown a lot over the last 12 months, largely because of streaming swaps. And Chainflip has their own version of this called Boost, but they're all similar. They've grown in this regard because of getting better price efficiency. So sometimes when you do a trade on Thorchain, it's actually cheaper than doing that same trade on a centralized exchange. In almost every case, if you're doing a large swap, it's actually cheaper to do it on Thorchain than to do it on a centralized exchange like Binance, for example, or Coinbase, because they charge a fee. They charge like a fee that scales up with that amount versus Thorchain and these other protocols are actually charging a much smaller fee, but you have those network fees. So the way that centralized exchanges have won over these years of them being in business is that they've abstracted away the gas fees because you're trading on a central order book. You're not actually trading crypto, you're trading within Binance's centralized order book, which means that you're saving money on Ethereum gas fees and Bitcoin gas fees. And that's why they've really won over the last couple of years. But when you look at a big swap on Thorchain, for example, the gas fee is static. So, the gas fee for a $100 swap is, $10. The gas fee for that same swap, if they do $1 million, is still $10. So doing that swap on Thorchain can actually give you a better end result than doing it on Binance, for example. So we've actually seen these DEX protocols get a lot more efficient in terms of pricing, and also get more efficient in terms of speed. The speed one is the laggard right now. Like with a streaming swap, it may take you 2 hours to do a swap that's $500,000, but you do that swap over a 2-hour period of time, and you actually get a better price than you would on a centralized exchange. So we've seen a lot of whales move over to using Thorchain and Maya and Chainflip as well to do these large swaps. And what has really fascinated me is that we're actually starting to see centralized exchanges themselves starting to use Thorchain to do these swaps. So basically what they're doing is, like, at the end of the day, they rebalance their balance sheets because the internal order books, some users are selling Bitcoin and buying more Ethereum. So the centralized exchange actually has to go on chain and do like the big swap to convert those assets later in the day. And a lot of them have started using decentralized protocols like Thorchain in order to do that. I think that that's going to be one of the biggest forms of volume that come in the next couple months and years, is going to be centralized exchanges rebalancing their own books using decentralized exchanges, which is kind of ironic, but we have seen it already with a few centralized exchanges.
Winanda wants to know, how many days a week does Cal wear his Leo thong?
Every
How'd
day.
that get in? How did that get in there?
I don't know.
Okay, here's one near and dear to my heart. When Leo AI by Gargi.
Soon,
yeah. Khan asked, how will LeoDex V3 user interface evolve to onboard newbies while keeping the pros hooked?
I think the key is keeping the key is keeping a simple but user friendly core feature set. So the core feature of LeoDex is that you can swap, especially with V3, you can swap across all 4 cross-chain protocols and get the best quote, and a simple user experience for doing that swap. And the way that we grow from there is that we slowly start to add in more features, especially as these protocols, expand what they can offer at a protocol level. Because at the end of the day, LeoDex is an interface to these protocols. So it's up to the protocols to add more features and then us to adopt those features and then make a good user experience for them. I think where LeoDex is going to succeed where other interfaces don't is actually in user friendliness. So, the ease of use that comes with LeoDex versus a lot of the other Dex interfaces that are out there, I think is our kind of key advantage. And our team has gotten significantly better at building, good UX because of all of our work on InLeo. So I think we're kind of uniquely positioned to offer a much better user experience where others are kind of overcomplicating it, in my opinion. So, having an advanced mode and having a simple mode and things like that will also help, us add more features without adding too much complexity.
Yeah, ease of use is important.
Yep.
LJATS, by the way, down lower, he mentioned that he signed up for premium about 12 hours ago and he's not getting his little icon. So just an FYI. But the question he asked, as most centralized exchange, not sexes and sex, users are quite siloed there and have often no DEX experience, will LeoDex publish ads on Binance, Kraken, or Coinbase front ends to attract a part of that audience? What's the marketing of LeoDex planned?
Yeah, I think, and especially initially, our target audience is the cross-chain world. So these are people that are already familiar with things like Thorchain, Maya, Chainflip, and Rango, but who are looking for a better UI, and one that also offers, one of our other advantages is that we've got the Leo token. So a lot of other UIs don't have their own token, or if they do have a token, it's not very successful. One thing with Leo is that, we've had a token for 6 years. So we have a token that already has a lot of utility, already has a lot of use case, already has a wide distribution in terms of users and stakeholders. And then we're bringing all of that to LeoDex. So, in Leo's place in the ecosystem is only benefited by LeoDex being there too. So in terms of marketing, I think what we need to do initially is just make sure that we've got the best swap UI UX possible. So, when someone comes to LeoDex from the cross-chain ecosystem, they're already familiar with other swapping UIs. We need to make sure that when they see LeoDex, they see something that is superior to what they've experienced in the cross-chain world. And then in addition to that, they should also see more benefit in using LeoDex than other UIs. So, people will tend towards UIs that they think are easy to use and good to use, and also UIs that they trust. So the more trust we can build for LeoDex, the better as well. Where if someone's coming in to do a $300,000 swap, they want to know that that swap's going to work. So building up that trust is going to take time. And then obviously, we have to work out bugs, and we just have to make the swapping experience as great as we possibly can. But as we continue to do that, I think we'll just start to see more and more swappers. And then over time, as we get that product market fit within the ecosystem, we can slowly start to expand outside of that and start looking towards, people who are not familiar with the cross-chain DEX ecosystem, and then onboarding them to LeoDex, which again, InLeo helps us with that because we have a lot of kind of normie level users who don't use DEXs right now, who can start to learn how DEXs work. And we can kind of tap into a much broader audience, I think, with the community that we've already got.
Lord Shaw asked, what about the transaction speed? Is this quicker than other mainstream DEXs? Have you compared the speeds? Well, I would presume the speeds on the swaps are based upon the blockchains they're located on, the exception being Hive and HBD, which of course then that goes through often, or a lot of things go through Hive engine, and that's just another layer that slows things down, but you don't really have any control over the speed, do you?
No, we don't have any control over the speed. So what we can do in terms of speed is that we are able to quote you the fastest and the cheapest swaps across all 4 protocols simultaneously. Whereas right now, like if you want to do that, there's a few UIs that allow you to do that, but most of them don't allow all 4 protocols at the same time. So what we're able to do is just let you choose the current fastest and the current cheapest, or again, a mix of the two. And then, it's the user's choice from there, which protocol to swap through. And then as those protocols, like I said, all these protocols are really competing with centralized exchanges. So if you ever look at, what Thorchain, Maya, and Chainflip are trying to work on, they're all trying to make swaps faster and cheaper. So as they make their swaps faster and cheaper, LeoDex just benefits from that because, we're just quoting from the protocol. So if Thorchain suddenly has, 10x faster swaps, then LeoDex suddenly has 10x faster swaps because we're just an interface. So it's and these teams are relentless in terms of building. Like the updates are pretty much on a weekly basis in terms of Thorchain, Maya, Chainflip. They're all updating things on a very regular basis and not only innovating new features but also making things more efficient and just continuously scaling. One thing that really excites me about the cross-chain ecosystem is, well, I guess two big things. One is that the teams are incredibly talented and they're all very focused on this big mission of it is Dex versus Sex. And you would think that like Thorchain, Maya, and Chainflip wouldn't like each other, but on the mass majority, they all are trying to help each other succeed. Like for example, the Maya team right now is helping Thorchain launch TCY, which is supposed to help with the lending crisis that happened on Thorchain a few months back. Technically, Maya is a direct competitor of Thorchain. Like if you're swapping on Thorchain, it means you're not swapping on Maya. That being said, these teams are so set on the mission is so much bigger than just our little pie and how are we competing against Thorchain. They're not even looking at that. They're looking at how is the Dex ecosystem, which includes Maya, Thorchain, and Chainflip, competing against the centralized exchange ecosystem, Binance, Coinbase, etc. So they've already chosen their side, and their side is the side of Dex. They don't care which protocol it is. I think that's a really incredible thing. So when you start to, like we've been working with these teams, obviously, on this update and other things, and these teams just want to help you. I mean, like they are active in the space. They cannot wait for you to succeed. And they look at LeoDex V3 and they're like, what can we do to help you get there faster? How can we help you make it better? So it's a really incredible space in terms of that. And then the other thing that excites me about this space specifically is that there's a lot of money in this space in terms of potential. People look at total addressable market, but in terms of like potential revenue, there's a ton of money in the space of swapping. And you see it with centralized exchanges. They're the most successful businesses in crypto. And decentralized exchanges are these protocols are scaling their revenues. So there's a lot of money in it for the protocol. And then the DEX interfaces are also scaling up and seeing more and more revenue come in, which means that all the different teams, including us, are able to tap into actual revenues and continue to build in a much more sustainable way than in most sectors of the crypto industry where there isn't a lot of money. I mean, there's almost no money in crypto. The ironic thing is that crypto is money, but then when you're building in this space, there's a lot of things that you work on where there is no potential revenue in it. So there is a lot of potential revenue in this DEX ecosystem. So those two things just really excite me in terms of focusing on LeoDex.
If I can extend beyond the DEX just for a brief second, and I don't know, this stems from Andersino, asked a question about the TC node, which is kind of a side thing because it's infrastructure and revenue generation. But if we stick in the financial arena, LeoDex is a DEX, but what about a financial network, or what about financial products? Have you thought about that? And what can you build on top of LeoDex potentially, and maybe what would be a time frame, a year, 18 months, 2 years, to build things such as lending, to build things such as bonding, to build other types of financial services on top of LeoDex, now that you can tap into different pools and different swaps and different types of currencies? Have you thought anything about that and going into let's call it Leo Financial Network instead of just LeoDex, by adding some of these financial services that people use, maybe collateralized lending and whatnot, to really expand the ecosystem and, of course, to generate fees?
Yeah, I think, at the and this has been something that we've, gotten ourselves into a little bit of trouble with, is that we're always kind of ahead of the curve in terms of the base blockchain that we're building on. Um, you know, we're trying to build technologies where there's no infrastructure in place. And that's kind of proven the skill set of our team, is that we're able to take something that literally does not exist and create, on top of that. Um, and what I think our focus should be with LeoDex, especially right now, as we're just kind of in the early days of scaling up, is taking what is already out there in this cross-chain space and making it really simplified, and fun to use user experience for those existing features. So, swapping is the core product right now, and other products are being rolled out. Like, I know that. Chainflip and Thorchain are both working on Perps, which is perpetual futures, which is a huge product for centralized exchanges and literally does not really exist in the DEX space, at least not at scale. So these protocols are already working on this. All we need to do is sit back, let the protocols build these core features, and then we build the interface that is the best interface for using those products. So I actually think we're in a much better position here, where instead of us having to innovate both the back end and the front end, we're able to focus on building the best front end we can, and then let the back end get built by the protocol itself.
Good explanation. Gargi, changing gears for a second. Any new features for Leo Premium subscription?
We added what was the last thing we added? There were a few things that got added recently in terms of premium, on InLeo specifically, but I also think there's going to be a LeoDex premium that will kind of cross over to InLeo as well. So keep your eyes open for that.
And of course, then tied into that will be also when they roll out, many AI services will be tied to premium too.
Yep.
Con asked, which is a good question about the tokenomics. If you go and you see some of the swap volume on LeoDex, it is raising some money in fees. How will LeoDex fee structure evolve to optimize earnings for buying Leo, and what impact might that have on hitting the tokenomics goal? Maybe if you want to quickly explain what happens to these fees and what happens to the money and how that supports Leo tokenomics.
Yeah, so the current fee structure is that the revenue earned by LeoDex's affiliate, which right now is only Maya, but in V3 it's going to be Maya, Thorchain, Chainflip, and Rango, buys the Leo token off the open market and then permapools it in the Leo Cacao pool. I have some interesting thoughts on the future of Leo tokenomics as LeoDex scales up. So right now we really need to focus on consistent volumes for LeoDex. So, we have had some good volume days, but we need to focus on getting consistent, high volume days and turn that into, high volume months. From month to month to month, we should get, focus on, can we create a steadily increasing average monthly trading volume on LeoDex. And as we continue to do that, then I think the Leo tokenomics will evolve pretty dramatically. If you look at it with $1 million per month in swap volume, which is not very much, we're generating, or I guess just take it to a more round number. If you look at like $4 million a month in LeoDex swap volume, we're looking at about $20,000 in affiliate fee revenue that comes to LeoDex. So that would be $20,000 in buying pressure on the Leo token, which is at the current price a very large amount of Leo. So yeah, I think you can kind of game that out. But again, the real lead domino, we don't need to worry about that right now, because the real lead domino is we need to get consistent volume. So we need to get LeoDex V3 rolled out. We need to get people using it, and we need that consistent volume to grow. Because one-time buys or whatever is not going to do anything. But if we can get consistent volume every single month that's also increasing, that's what's going to have a dramatic impact on the Leo price.
Now, is this buying Leo and putting in the liquidity pool, or is this buy and burn?
This is the way it's structured now is buy and deploy liquidity. I think at some point it may be good to revisit that and consider, possibly a buy and burn or a buy and more distribute model. But that's going to be something that needs to get voted by Leo stakeholders.
Yeah, there really is a lot of ways you can go with that in terms of the tokenomics. Once they start floating in and buying the Leo token,
Right.
uh, you may find the exact opposite where everybody wants a burn, but because people want more tokens because they believe in the future, it's just like stocks where stock splits get everybody excited, whereas reverse stock splits usually are the sign of a declining company. And so, the crypto mindset is less tokens is better, but history in the stock market says companies that are growing that are doubling their stocks for a 2-to-1 stock split, markets go crazy because people know the future is brighter, and now I got twice as much as I had before, or 50% more than I had before, whatever the number is. So if you could take some of that and start distributing to the community who is involved, that's a great way to incentivize even more activity and get people more excited about the future.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think, you outlined a good point, which is that the lead domino is getting that volume in and growing it and having it be consistent. And then from there, I don't think it's good to be completely rigid. And I think that that's, your kind of broader point is that a lot of people in crypto are very rigid about like every single dollar that's generated needs to buy and burn the token. Um, and I think that having rigid economics is a problem not only in crypto, but even if you look at broader economies like the Fed, for example, like being too rigid in how you do things and being too slow to move is actually creating economic problems. So you really do need to look at Leo as its own little economy, and right now we have a revenue problem. So generating fee revenue from LeoDex V3 is going to solve the revenue problem, and then it creates a new problem, if you want to call it, or something that needs to be considered is as more Leo gets bought, is where is the best place to deploy it at various times. And I think that economic conditions will change that. So right now it might make the most sense to buy Leo and deploy it in the Leo cacao pool. But once you have $1 million in that pool, does it make more sense to then start buying Leo and burning it? And then once you've burned $1 million worth of Leo, does it then make sense to switch back to buying and deploying the liquidity pool? And I think that that's going to have various economic indicators in terms of what's best at the right time. So I think that a potential future for Leo tokenomics is where the Leo DAO would vote on what to do with revenue in real time. So the use of revenue could change dramatically from day to day or month to month. Um, and perhaps we make that like a monthly thing. So like, or even quarterly. So every quarter, what happens with the Leo, the revenue generated by affiliate on LeoDex is different than the month before. So, let's say that current economic indicators say that we should buy and burn Leo. Then the Leo stakeholders vote to buy and burn 100% of the revenue through the Leo token. And then let's say that the next quarter, everyone's looked at the economic indicators, and then the community decides, hey, I think it's best to actually buy and deploy liquidity into the Leo cacao pool. So then 100% of the revenue for that quarter will buy and deploy liquidity in the Leo cacao pool. And then as those indicators shift, it can continuously shift in different directions. And I think that good economic indicators can be created around, how that should change and how people should vote. And obviously the Leo stakeholders, having a stake weighted vote on this, the stakeholders are going to vote for whatever is most beneficial to the Leo token itself.
Well, here's an idea. How about an incentivization tied to LeoDex? So if you do swaps, you get a percentage of your swap or some type of payout in Leo as an incentive for using LeoDex, because that's the great thing about a token is you can incentivize whatever activity you want. And if you have this stream of revenue where you say, okay, for the next month or the next quarter or the next 2 weeks or whatever it is, if you use LeoDex, you get I don't know, I'll just make up a number, 0.5% of your swap will be paid out in Leo. So that's a way to incentivize people to use Leo, which of course then will generate more fees, and you get kind of this mini feedback loop that starts to take place.
Yep. Yeah, and I think like you're basically talking about like a Leo rebate, which is something I've also thought about, where you do a swap and then you get rebate. Like if it charges you a 0.45% fee on that swap, maybe you get like 0.2% of that fee back to you as Leo tokens as a rebate, which means that there was still buy pressure on Leo because the fee is paid in Brune or Cacao or USDC for chain flip. And then we use that revenue to buy Leo and then send you the rebate autonomously. So there's still buy pressure on Leo, but then the end user is actually getting a rebate. And again, I think a lot of these things can be voted on based on those economic indicators, and really just kind of creating a more real time. I think it's unrealistic to say that this is how things should be done forever. So like if we say like Leo should be bought and burned, like to say that that's what should be done in perpetuity with this LeoDex revenue, I think is a not a very holistic picture of how economics works, because economics in the real world are highly variable and continue to change. So we need to stay flexible and focused on what is best for Leo at any given moment based on the indicators in front of us.
Well, and even more importantly, money is now technology, and we know how technology changes.
Right.
So, Sheeb asked, this was from earlier. What about your swap kit kind of DApp?
Yeah, well, what we've basically built here for LeoDex is our own version of SwapKit, which if you're not familiar with SwapKit, it was originally created by the Thor Swap team. And it essentially was just to oversimplify it essentially was an SDK or a software kit that any other UI could take and allow swaps on the major protocols like Thorchain, Chainflip, and Maya using that simple to integrate kit. And then SwapKit would take a small fee from the affiliate fee, and then the remainder of that fee would get sent to the exchange interface. So for example, if the affiliate fee is set at like 0.45%, 0.15% of that would go to SwapKit, and then 0.3% of that would go to the affiliate, the actual interface that integrated SwapKit. So essentially creating like a backend that any other interface can tap into. We've recently seen Dorito Dex actually come out with their own version of SwapKit, so they're calling it DKit. And what we've built for LeoDex is essentially our own version of SwapKit. So there are more and more versions, and I expect a lot more to come out in the future of something like a SwapKit. So I think potentially in the future, one thing Leo can do is release this kind of Leo kit or whatever we decide to name it, and then just release it as open source software that anyone can tap into. And in exchange, we take a small, 0.1% fee, for example, on every swap that is done through LeoKit. And that does the exact same thing as the affiliate revenue on LeoDex. So it opens us up to earning affiliate revenue, not only from, the LeoDex UI, but from every UI that would integrate LeoKit. Like I said, it's already getting kind of competitive in terms of these kits. And I think it will get more and more competitive over time. So we need to find different ways, and Tass, you kind of touched on this a little bit, is that there's a lot of other financial tools out there. So we can start to look at some of these other tools, and as these protocols expand, if we're not only offering swaps, but we're also offering perps, and we're also offering liquidity, and we're also offering collateralized lending. Because, for example, Maya integrates collateralized lending at the protocol level, and then the LeoDex interface adds an interface to that protocol layer, then we also add the ability for other UIs to tap into our software kit and then add collateralized lending to their UI using LeoKit. Now we have some differentiation in the market. So right now, I think it's a little bit hard to release something like a swap kit and have good differentiation. So we're going to focus on LeoDex and getting good volume, and then I think as these other features start to roll out, we'll be able to roll out LeoKit and hopefully get other UIs to integrate it, which would just mean more and more revenue for the Leo token. And again, this is all the focus going forward. I mean, the entire team now is focused on just making LeoDex as successful as possible. And like I said, there's a lot of teams that are working really hard in this space, and there's a lot of money in this space in terms of revenue. So I've never been more excited about what we can achieve with Leo than I am when I start to think about what LeoDex is capable of.
Yeah, and it seems your buying bot is down because Andresino posted a picture from LeoDex. It said the deployment volume target $500 and the pool's at 23,000, over 4,600% over the volume target. So I guess the buys haven't exactly been taking place.
Yeah, well, and they have in some cases, but you have to remember that pool sits there and it just will buy Leo over time. So it also needs to avoid being front run and other things. But I guess you can theoretically know that at some point it's going to buy that Leo, so you can do what you will with that information.
Well, what it's saying is there's $23,000 worth of Leo or I guess 11,500 worth of Leo buying and 11,500 worth of cacao buying over the next whatever period, whenever it starts. And I guess you're putting in small buys all the time.
Yeah. So that it's like a future thing. It's going to get bought in the future. So I think it's kind of an interesting thing to be able to even see that, on the UI.
Yeah, David Pena asked, LeoDex have any plans with AI? My question with that is, have you thought about any automated trading bots, AMMs, arbitrage, anything like that tied to LeoDex, which could then be used, maybe pulling some resources and then the profits used to buy Leo?
Yeah, I have put a fair bit of thought into that, and I think that we have some cool ways we can tie it into InLeo as well. But again, I just would reiterate that what we should focus on is building the best interface for these cross-chain protocols. And as they roll out these features, we just build a great interface for the feature that they build on the back end. So, for example, the Ruggira launch, actually the Ruggira merge event just went live, a few days ago. One of the big things, and if you don't know what Ruggira is actually a second layer, essentially a second layer on Thorchain. So they're calling it an app layer, where tokens can now be deployed on Thorchain, applications can now be built on Thorchain, and one of the kind of key applications that Ruggira is launching on Thorchain, in addition to perps, is also AI trading bots and various other AI features. So the Ruggira team's already building the back end for this. Now what we can do is just build a great front end for when that's ready. So when the Ruggira team launches these AI bots or things like perpetuals, we're able to just build a great interface framework on LeoDex, and now you get those features on LeoDex. And it was built, coded, and audited by the Ruggira team, which is much bigger than our team, and we just made a great interface for it. So again, when you look at any of these like future-looking features, I think a lot of it is going to be us just focusing on what we're really good at, which is making a great user experience on the front end, and then these other teams innovating everything else on the back end.
Baby Girl asked a number of times, will there be other protocols added to LeoDex or just these four?
Yeah, I responded over text on that one. If there's more protocols that come out in the future, we can integrate them. So I would say as protocols come out and they gain, traction in the market, we can integrate them as we see fit. So, if for example, another fork of Thorchain happens and it gains volume and gains traction, then it's our incentive to add it to LeoDex as, you know, a fifth option and other options in the future.
Yeah. Somebody asked, MCoins asked about ad protocol. You've answered that before. The ad protocol is going to be dependent on activity, and the activity is still low on Leo or on in Leo. So until activity picks up, there's no ad protocol. Con mentioned the anti-Leo and the Hive and the downvoting. We've gone through that plenty of times over and over. It is what it is.
Yeah, I've taken a kind of it is what it is approach to everything that's been happening on Hive. You know, you've got some things that I fervently disagree with. You know, for example, the DHF being controlled by one person. You know, so if you want to get funding, you have to go through this person. I disagree with that for many reasons. But yeah, I've decided to step away from all the politicking and just focus on LeoDex. So until those things get resolved, my focus is entirely on LeoDex and making it hyper successful. Because yeah, I've grown very tired of the politics. I think we've wasted, you know, essentially 2 months of time this year just focusing on the DHF and politics. And at the end of the day, what I've realized is that if you don't have this one vote, then you have no shot at funding. So it is it's sad to see, especially because I think Hive is a great blockchain. I think it's a great decentralized ecosystem, but this one part of Hive is very centralized, and until it's fixed and resolved, I just think our focus should be on the things that are in our control. Very stoic mindset. You know, we can focus on what is in our control, and what is in our control is making, you know, LeoDex the best cross-chain swapping interface out there, and having that affiliate fee revenue come in and make Leo a much more successful token and ecosystem. Yeah, Ben said success is the best revenge, and I think that us focusing on making Leo hyper successful is what is going to be the best thing for us in the long run. So whatever happens with the politics over on Hive, I don't really care to pay attention to it anymore. So I again just focus on LeoDex and growing the volume there and making the best swap product that we can. And I also mentioned earlier that there's a lot of reasons why I'm excited about this cross-chain ecosystem and building in it. And I've been spending a lot more time, you know, just really focused on it. These teams are just so excited to have new players and people trying to build and add value to the ecosystem. You know, they're trying to help us in any way they can. And they're all very deeply incentivized for the whole cross-chain ecosystem to grow. So I love being in a place where there's other people that are excited about building great products, that are also excited to work with you and make products even better. So, you know, the entire, like I said, the entire team is focused on just building the best product we can in the form of LeoDex. So we'll just continue to do that.
Yeah, it comes back to what we've talked about in the past is development and outpacing and building. And, you know, obviously this call has been focused on LeoDex, but we've done a lot of calls, and a lot of the Lion's Den is about AI and what's going on in the AI world. And that's equally as exciting. And when you have a cross-chain situation that's starting to reach out through LeoDex, and then you start to incorporate into in Leo AI services, AI features, down the road, that could be a great on ramp to get people in and say, you know, here's a chatbot you can use. Here's an image generator you can use. Here's an AI image editor that you can use, and all this stuff, like you're saying in the cross chain world, in the Dex world. Guess what's happening in the AI world? There's all these people building these models and these different features that can be incorporated into different sites using open soft architecture, that you can just add this, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, our platform now offers all of this.
Yep. Yeah.
Of course,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, of course, you need that continual data flow, and you also need the inference, which is what a lot of projects run into the problem with.
Right. Right. And, you know, and all this stuff is still being built. You know, we're still training Leo AI, and we're still refining the InLeo platform and getting it better. Like, I think at scale, InLeo will still be, you know, great on its own. But I do think that some major changes are needed, you know, with the way that certain things are going at the base blockchain. So, you know, the focus is on LeoDex, making it hyper successful, and then we'll address some of these other things as time goes on. But meanwhile, all this is going on. Leo AI still chugs along. You guys have already seen some of the AI stuff we've been fooling around with on the front end. So you'll just see that continue to scale up at the end of the day.
Yep, and I'm going to beat my drum again. Just keep feeding more data, even if you don't see it today. It's all being captured. It's all going in there, and it all bear fruit in the future. That's just how it works.
Yep.
Ahmed is speaking of Taskmaster's idea. I don't know which one that simple swap a KYC less sex hybrid has a rebate thing with their own token. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think you can always use Leo as an incentivization if there's something that we want, some type of activity we want to incentivize. The token can be used for that. What about WLEO IO now with LeoDex V3? Are you thinking about CoinGecko or KMC, CoinMarketCap? WLEO.io, I don't know. Is that getting listed there? I don't know what that means.
I'm not sure.
WLEO.io is just basically, isn't that what you use for the swapping of the bridges? Isn't that?
Yeah, just various
that's
forms of Leo.
yeah.
I
That's
think at some point in the near future, you know, possibly in one of the next versions of LeoDex, we'll focus on, you know,
bringing
we'll
that in.
integrate it directly into LeoDex.
Yeah, that
so that
makes
there's
sense.
not fragmented UIs.
That makes a lot of sense.
I'm sharing another screenshot of the. So this is a page that we've worked on, which, you know, if you see the long run roadmap, and I'll talk more about this as time goes on too, you know, as we get V3 rolled out. The long term roadmap of LeoDex is to make it really like so easy to use that it's as easy and even kind of looks like a centralized exchange. So one thing that we've worked on, and this took a lot of work, but I think it was definitely worth it because nothing like this really exists in the cross-chain space, is building token pages. So you can look up the various tokens that are on LeoDex, for example, Leo, Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. So I just shared a screenshot in the threadcast of the Leo token page. So if you search Leo on LeoDex, this is what comes up. And it's essentially like a combination of like the coin market cap page for Leo. And then on the right side, you can actually just do a swap to Leo, you know, for example, from Bitcoin or from any other asset. So it's really sweet. And I'm just really proud of how it turned out with the team. So again, like this kind of gives you a little bit of a lens into the future of LeoDex, which is just, you know, incredible usability and just refining everything and making it, you know, making the world of cross-chain essentially as easy to use as centralized exchanges.
Yeah, and that's been for years the problem with crypto is the lack of ease of use. And when you talk about the masses, when you talk about non-techie people, non-financial people, it has to be click here, click there, you're done. Anything beyond that, it's gets too convoluted.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, we need to, again, focus is really important here. I think, you know, as a team, we've said yes, and a community, as a team and community, we've said yes to a lot of things where we really needed to focus on particular things. And I think that, you know, what we're seeing here with LeoDex is a major opportunity to build an application that is in a space that is in a hyper growth phase, and we can tap into a lot of that growth and have that growth benefit the Leo economy in a way that we've never been able to do before, because we haven't ever really built in an ecosystem that's just in a like hyper expansion phase that has a huge total addressable market. And LeoDex really has that with this cross-chain space. So we're going to be making the best cross-chain UI that is out there. And I think that LeoDex V3 is going to be a real a real moment where people use it and they're like, holy shit, like the Leo team is doing it. And I hope some of the screenshots I've shared throughout the Threadcast kind of show that. We're bringing all the innovation that we've been able to do on the Web3 social media side of things, and we're applying it to cross-chain. And I think that it's just going to be extremely successful for us. So again, just really looking at, and if you want to do your own research, just look at the daily volumes that happen, on various cross-chain interfaces. I'll just share one example. I'll share a weekly example of the Thorchain, the combined Thorchain and Maya interfaces, and keep in mind that like 90% of this is actually Thorchain. So LeoDex has never been able to tap into Thorchain volumes, but now we can with the V3 update. In the last week, there are 5 interfaces that have made more than $30,000 in terms of affiliate revenue in the last week. One of those interfaces made over $100,000 in just a week. So that's $400,000 monthly. And that's all Thorchain volume. So just, when you think about the potential here, I would look at these other interfaces and maybe even open the other interfaces and try playing around with them a little bit. And then think about how the Leo team can innovate here and bring a much better user experience and innovate new features. And again, just refine that UI UX. And if we can start tapping into some material percentage of this affiliate fee revenue that's out there. And again, this is Thorchain and Maya, and it doesn't even include Chainflip, and Chainflip's numbers are very good as well. So we'll just keep pushing forward on all the innovation and make LeoDex extremely successful. But with that, any other final questions or words you want to throw in, Task, before we jump off?
No, there's a few other questions, but they're kind of a lot of what we've gone over and duplicated. It's just, it's like anything. When you look at being a part of something, where is building taking place, especially in the crypto world? I mean, everybody wants to focus on tokens and price go up or price go down in the markets and things are crashing, all that nonsense. Look for something that is going to be bigger in 5 or 10 years. And to be bigger in 5 or 10 years, there has to be building. There has to be flexibility. So Andersino asked earlier, does this mean that updates to InLeo UI are going to stop in favor of LeoDex? And I'm going to presume no, they're not going to stop it. There has to be updates and things fixed. That'll be addressed. But the focus now is to build a revenue stream, and LeoDex seems to offer the best tentacles for that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, is that we should focus on what is the best outcome in the long run for Leo stakeholders. And that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. So with that, I think I'm not seeing anything else that's urgent on here. So if you haven't used LeoDex, go use it, even if it's just on a small transaction to try it out. Give it a shot.
Yeah.
When is V3 being launched? Is it live now? I haven't been there today.
So we're in closed beta on V3 right now, but I do want to release it to open beta probably by tomorrow. I was trying to push for it to get done this AMA, but there are a few bugs I found this morning that I wanted the devs to fix before anyone else uses it. So I'm going to say open beta will start tomorrow, most likely, and then we'll do some more bug fixes and then try to get to production by Friday is what I'm going to really push for. So yeah, open beta tomorrow. So there will be a link to the open beta, and then production by Friday is. I'm pushing the team, day and night right now to make production by Friday a reality. So I'm pretty confident in that estimate.
Very good. So I think we got it covered. Thanks for having me today, and Well, with that, chain chatter tomorrow.
Yeah. Thanks, Task, for joining. I appreciate you stepping in. And yeah, we will have a chain chatter tomorrow. So I will put up the announcements for it. We'll have a guest from the cross chain space. So yeah, looking forward to getting chain chatter back off the ground. And we did a little trial run last week, but tomorrow we'll have an actual guest and talk all things cross chain. So thanks, Task. Thanks everyone for coming, and we will see you guys tomorrow.